Um, oh, perfect, perfect. I started. Well, first of all, I'm very happy to welcome today Tamara Adrian. Tamara Adrian is a famous activist, LGBT plus activist, but she's also an MP in Venezuela. And even more importantly, today, she's the co-chair of the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. So Tamara, first, before we start talking a little bit about IDAHOTBIT this year, I would love if you could introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what brought you to this leadership position in Venezuela and your experience.
Well, as you say, I'm Tamara Adrian. I was the very first trans people elected for a parliament in the Western Hemisphere back in 2015. I've been involved in the fight for equal rights at the international level for many, many years now, since 2002, if I recall well, or 2003. We started to push forward for the recognition of LGBTI issues at the level of the UN, at the level of the OAS. And in this parkour, I have been able to deal with WHO, with ACNUR, I mean, with different organisms of UN, and of course with OES too. And I've been the co-chair for IDAHOT. Well, actually, when I began to be the co-chair, it was the time of IDAHOT, International Day Against Homophobia, and then we introduced transphobia, and then we introduced biphobia, and then we introduced intersexophobia in order to, at the request of groups. I mean, it was not an initiative of the chair, but basically it was the request of groups that were engaged in the fight of those identities, in the case of trans, in the case of bisexual people, and in the case of intersex, as we respect that every group has to have their own voice and have the possibility of express themselves within the context of their identities. And then this year we came with this crazy idea that has not been placed in thought completely, is that as 17 May was the day in which back in 1989 the WHO decriminalized homosexuality, and 7 days later, back in 2019, it was the day in which the same occurred to trans and transsexuality. To have not a day, but a week. We haven't implemented this, but I think instead of a day, to have a week or 10 days of celebration and commemoration will be a possibility that would allow much more pressure on the media, much more activities, and perhaps much more conscience on people about the need to change the minds and the hearts of the people. Yesterday, I posted a tweet in which I say, basically in Spanish, I say thank you to all those who posted hate messages, because they show how needed it is this day, and how important it is to change minds and hearts.
Yeah, so Tamara, one of the things that you point out is that there are more and more countries that have activities around the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. You know, we have also seen that many, the European Union and many countries officially recognize this International Day. You know, one of the things that I would love to hear from you is, why do you think it's important that LGBT people have one day where they can both celebrate and commemorate their journey? Why, in your opinion, is it an important day?
It is an important day because it's a day of visibility and is a day of social fight. I mean, the oppression against LGBTI people, it's the norm in the world, and it continues to be the norm, at least the social norm, even in countries in which equal rights have been achieved. Because the change of mind is much, in general, is much more slower than the change of the law. Although the change of the law is the prerequisite in order to get equality on the facts. And let's just take, for example, what is happening with women's rights in this moment of confinement and how it has affected their rights in and have create a higher rate of violence, and has been recorded by the denouncers that have been made around the world. And that means that in most of the countries, although 27 countries do not allow women to have equal rights than men in this moment, but in general, most of the countries have equal rights. This is not the guarantee of an equal treatment. And I think the same would happen with equal rights for LGBTI people. In those countries in which equal right has been achieved, a change from the legal point of view, it's the origin of a social change, but this social change might take a longer time than we expect.
Well, I love this. You know, you're pointing out that even though there has been tremendous progress in Latin America, but also in the United States and part of Europe, we still have a very long way to go. And you're pointing out that, you know, we are targeting both legal changes and hearts and mind changes. As you know, Tamara, I work a lot with private companies to try basically to leverage their power to contribute to social change. What do you think can be the role of the private sector in helping those legal and social changes that you're describing?
I think the role of the private sector is indispensable in order to change also the situation. Sometimes they need for a little bit of encouragement for engage into this change. And we then notice how many companies are now of the 500 most important companies are now engaged into equality, but some of them are not. So in some cases, we have to show how important it is for productivity and how that impact negatively to not be engaged into equality for those companies are not. And that could provoke a change in those companies that are not engaged into equality. And but let's not forget that besides the top 500 companies around the world, we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands or millions of small companies or even family companies that would have also to take notice of this how this openness to equality increments their productivity and also increments the ability for people to feel well within those work centers, and promotes then productivity and increase their income.
Well, I love this, and I think, you know, I completely agree with you that, which is that today the role of the most progressive companies to bring along with them the smaller companies that don't even have on their radar screen the human rights of LGBT people. And I think that the next step is to go beyond the walls of your company and try to bring in other smaller, maybe, or other more conservative companies on the same journey than you've been on. So Tamara, one question that I have is that the theme of yesterday's International Day, but also, you know, as you mentioned, it's kind of a celebration all of this week, is breaking the silence. Why breaking the silence, and what does breaking the silence mean?
As you know, every year we at the level of the committee, we try to vote for a theme for the year in order to encourage people to encompass the day with a new perspective. In the past years, we have been centered into education, into inclusion of children, elder people. And this year we choose Break the Silence because it was chosen long before COVID pandemics start. But it also was a good opportunity to see how the COVID pandemics is affecting disproportionately and differentiatedly LGBTI people in their access to health care, in the one hand, in their situation within the families, because many people have had to come back to their families where they are not well received, or they are getting bad treatments, and for those who are confined because they are now COVID positive, and they have to be isolated, or they are in some places where they stay with other people that have the COVID, how they are treated and how they are sometimes not respected in their gender identities or sexual orientations.
Yeah, and that, you know, I love the fact that you mentioned that, because as we know, as we both know, being LGBT, very often the homophobia and the transphobia starts at home, meaning within the family is where sometimes the worst of homophobia and transphobia can be. And so a lot of young people are trapped in their home with people that might not be supportive of their sexual orientation or gender identity.
You know, last year I did a survey about LGBTI people living in Venezuela and Venezuelans living abroad to compare their situation. And the result, one of the most compelling findings of this research was that in the case of families, the main aggressor was the mother. And it was by long, in most of the cases, the person that was most aggressive against LGBTI people within the families. It was a finding that was very, very hard for me to process. And then I understood that sometimes women are facing a kind of Stockholm syndrome, and they are at the same time they are preserving. They are subject to the patriarchal system, and at the same time they protect it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, listen, Tamara, I imagine you are in high demand today, so I'm not going to take too much of your time. So my last question to you will be: how are you commemorating IDAHOT? You know, what are you doing these few days? Are you doing a lot of social media? You know, how are you marking the International Day against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia?
Yes, well, social media in these days of confinement are the way to communicate. Then I have had a lot of Zooms and a lot of other live via Instagram. And I've been producing some videos, including one with the MPs, other MPs, me and other MPs of the National Assembly, calling for equality. And I am promoting an agreement of the National Assembly recommending to take care of LGBTI people within the COVID, and to document those violations of human rights that might occur during the COVID pandemics.
Well, thank you so much, Tamara. You are a great inspiration. I think the first time we met was when you came to the World Bank to advocate for the World Bank, to take in consideration the development needs of LGBT people. It's been a pleasure working with you. Now we are together on the committee of IDAHOT, and I'm so happy to work under your chairmanship. And thank you so much for being very generous with your time. And I hope I see you soon. And happy IDAHOT to you.
Thank you, likewise, and I hope to see you soon in person.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.